Welcome to Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers and its monthly author showcase. I am your host, Peter Stockwell. Author Denise Frisino is visiting with us this month at the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Studios. We met recently at the Pacific Northwest Booksellers trade show down in Tacoma, and she agreed to come on our show and share her current literary endeavors. I thought I would start by asking you, Denise, if you could provide our Claw and BCAT audiences an overview of your literary and your creative history. What muse got a hold of you and implored you to write?
That muse started at a very early age, and it was propelled by my mother, actually. So I was up too many trees as a child with 3 brothers, and she decided, better do something. So she tried to get me into ballet at about age 5. Luckily for me, all the classes were full, so she got me into hula. Now, I'm talking hula in about 1957. It was brand new, and she thought, well, this will be something for Denise to do. But unfortunately, I fell in love with theater, and that was the beginning. And then when I was about 15 years old, she saw me doing the Tahitian, and well, that was the end of my hula career, right then and there. But I continued on in theater, and I've been in theater since I was about 5 years old, performing. I did on camera, and I used to write and direct and produce little video, and I wrote for theater, and I was a teacher. I taught media and drama and writing. And the kids, there was really nothing for plays for middle school students, so I started writing plays. And I was doing about 5 shows a year with my middle school students, and that's when I started writing books. I thought, well, what the heck? I'm going to make a movie someday, I said to myself. And I thought, but you know what? I'm Denise Frisino from Seattle, Washington. They're not going to let me write the script. So I wrote my first book, Whiskey Cove, and then I put it to script form thinking, aha, now I own the project, and let's try Hollywood now. So that's where the muse got me, was at about age 5 in a little green skirt.
Well, that sounds interesting. You know, one of the books we're going to look at today is what you refer to as a historical fiction. Orchids of War is the book, and I understand that you recently published it with the Book Publishers Network.
Correct.
And it is set in that turbulent time of the 20th century called World War II. What drew you to this time period?
I know, the story literally found me, When I was researching for Whiskey Cove, I was in the San Juan Islands on a boat with a gentleman who told me that he could show me off Wasp Island where the FBI would sit and watch for, because this pertains to rum runners through our San Juan Islands. Again, a historical fiction. So he says, oh, honey, but Prohibition, that's nothing. And I looked at him and I thought, well, what do you mean it's nothing? This was in the 1980s. And he said, here's a story for you. And I kept quiet about that story, which my family thinks is a miracle, for all of these years until I just got it published, because he told me of a Caucasian woman who was fluent in Japanese and studying at the University of Washington right before the war broke out. The FBI found out about her, came and took her and placed her in some bars in San Francisco area and had her listen to the conversations of the Japanese to try and unearth the spies. And that's where I got the concept for this book. But it was the research, the years of research. Over 3 years of research went into this book alone. And that's where I got the storyline. It literally found me. And so did a lot of the research. It's been miracle after miracle of information finding me that pertains to the storyline.
Very good. Well, specifically with your book, Orchids of War, you chose the Japanese spy apparatus, and you've been talking about it, and it's the attempts to obtain as much information on the West Coast as they could at the beginning of World War II. What background did you have, or that drove this narrative that you came up with?
So when I started in to research this, I actually started more than 3 years ago, but in earnest 3 years ago, I was happening on story after story after story that was relevant to this, to the storyline, and to building characters. For example, in my Rotary, my Lake Forest Park Rotary, he was Captain Dick McNeese, and he was at Kaneohe for the bombing. He was there. He claims he was the first man shot at, and I absolutely believe him because his story's phenomenal. That day on December 7th. So I wanted to see what it was like to stand above Kaneohe, which is on the far side of Oahu, where the Japanese came up and over the Paoli, and I wanted to see what it was like at 7:45 on December 7th. So I went there in 2014 because it was a Sunday. I wanted to feel the air. I wanted to watch the water. Sure enough, the moon was behind me at the Paoli. They said that the Japanese rode in on a full moon. And so it was his incidences that had happened to him specifically the night before, so I used it in the book, about what it was like to be there that morning. And they heard engines. And one of the pilots, PBY pilots, came in and said, we were told to start bombing anyone that was outside of a specific area that was set up by the Navy for any submarines outside of that area. We were supposed to drop bombs on. And he came in and he sat down at the table that morning and he said, I saw a ship that was outside and I dropped bombs. Are we at war? And Dick said, just then they heard it. They heard the engines, and he ran outside, and the bombers came flying right down, and they shot right at him and took off. And he told how he survived that day. So it's the little incidences that I've gotten through these that have helped me build the storyline. I've interviewed I don't know how many people, and I'm still interviewing because it has a sequel. So I'm still interviewing people, and I take, like I've said, the little things that you can't find in a history book, and I add them and weave them in to create a really true storyline. And here's one of the miracles, if I may, that happened. So I'm in Hawaii, and for December of 2014, Densho, which is the Japanese newspaper that means to remember, had run an article. And what they had done is they had gone into the archives, and they pulled up. Yeah, I told you. I told you about this.
I saw that on your website and read about that.
Yeah.
I thought that was. Go ahead, tell this story.
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. So they pull up. They go to their archives and they pull up a Caucasian man who they had interviewed, and for December 7th, they put up what is it like to be in Burma for 2.5 years under Japanese snipers, and then to come home and live amongst the Japanese and work amongst them again once the war was over. Well, when I got home from being in Hawaii, this woman, Japanese woman, came up and showed me this, and she says, "Look, Denise, look at this." It was my father. It was my father who had been in Burma for 2.5 years that they had pulled up for an interview.
Incredible.
So I have a 4-hour tape of my father that we did not know existed. My father wrote for the PI for 35 years, Seattle Post-Intelligencer, so that's why they had the interview. But those are the types of miracles that have helped put this book together.
Well, now we have a video of the interview that you had with that Pearl Harbor veteran. And
Dr. Raleigh.
And what I'd like to do is have our audience take a look at that so we get an understanding of this research that you've gone through. So let's roll tape on that.
So this was at Pearl Harbor, though, correct?
Yeah, it's from Fort Island. Fort Island is the airstrip in Fort Island, and that's where the first bombs dropped from the attack. And so they wanted to disable the airstrip so they couldn't get fighters up to defend the Japanese bombing planes.
And you saw that?
Yeah, the first indication of an attack was a flight of high-level bombers at around 10,000 feet, and we had no training on identifying Japanese planes. So I couldn't tell what those planes were, but there was a flight of about 9 of them, a V formation. You know how they fly?
Yeah.
And I was on the quarter deck. I was also the deck, and I looked up there, could hear them, and looked up there. All of a sudden, these little black things came on, and they shouldn't be doing any practice bombing over there. And the first one exploded on Fort Island. And I told the bosun to watch set conditions, sound general quarters, and you have a klaxon. You just pull a lever, and it sounds
Right. Thank you so
at
much.
general quarters. And he got on the bullhorn and he said, general quarters, all hands man your battle stations. This is no shit.
I love it. I read that in the book, At Dawn We Slept, that he actually had to say, this is no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that young ensign was Dr. Raleigh. He became a dentist after the war. Remember, I'm Denise Frisino. My next book is Orchids of War. And please come back. I will be talking and talking and talking. Thank you. Bye.
Well, that was fascinating. We just saw the video of her interview with this Pearl Harbor veteran, and I think we now have an appreciation of the work that you have gone through while researching this story for Orchids of War. Can you tell us anything about any of the other interviews that you have done?
Like I said earlier, there's several of them, and one of the most interesting facts is, did you know that most people did not know where Pearl Harbor was prior to the attack? That is one of the first questions I ask, and ironically, it's one of the questions that they had asked my father, and he's answering it too. Now, my father had been deceased for about 8 years when I found this video, but he didn't know where it was. A lot of people, I found one woman who knew where it was, and the only reason is because she had just sent cookies for Thanksgiving. But everyone else has told me that they had to go look up an encyclopedia, find a map. So it's things like this that I'm looking for in my interviews that bring it to the human side and that are going to add depth to my characters.
Authenticity to the story
Absolutely.
itself.
Yeah.
Your main heroine, Billy O'Shaughnessy, is a young American lady who learns to speak fluent Japanese. What prompted your development of such an intriguing character? Because I find her fascinating.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Do you speak Japanese?
No, no. When the outline of the story was first told to me in the early 80s or late 70s, I thought, wow, that would be a wonderful part for any actress to play too. And I always look at that because I feel that if it is intriguing enough and if the person has enough depth, that people are really going to buy in that she's a real life character and want to follow her and her escapades. But it just, the more I thought of it being a woman who was helping the FBI back then, I found that to be, because this was way before, remember, we had any of the others and a lot of knowledge of the Purple Code or of magic and the decrypting machines that were used during World War II, specifically for the Japanese, the Pacific Theater. So I don't know, I just thought, wow, she would be fun.
Yeah. In general sense, how do you develop characters? Now, I find a couple of your characters, for instance, the FBI man, Jack. He is different. I think different's the only word I can use there. And Eileen, her friend, her Japanese friend, and their family and such, she's a fascinating character as well. And her brother, he gets involved in this quite a bit.
Yes, he does.
All right, so how do you develop these characters?
Well, I start out in control, and then I feel like they take over. I am not kidding you. I love a lot of different characters, and if you note too that one of the things that I have done is I not only have Japanese characters, Irish, German, I have Chinese, African American. I like a multitude because when I was in grade school at St. Teresa's in the Madrona district in Seattle, there were 32 in my 8th grade, and only 16 of them were Caucasian. That meant that I was, for 8 years.
You were surrounded.
I was surrounded, and there was a lot of Filipino, Japanese, there was all different. And I remember specifically as a child going into one of the Japanese homes and seeing the mothers' dolls the geisha or the
Oh, yeah.
dolls inside the case, and just being fascinated. And I just couldn't wait to get back there to study them. But I think you asked me how I developed my characters, didn't
Yeah,
you? Sorry about that.
Well,
but-
I mean, for instance, you've got her father being Irish,
Right.
and her mother being German.
That's true.
So,
That's right.
were those characters that you made up, or are they
we do
from
write
the history?
about what we know about, and I've got a kind of a crazy family and a lot of friends. And I think that one of the things that you do as an actress is you study people.
Yeah.
You have to be able to study people to incorporate some of the, maybe they have a twitch, you don't know, whatever it is that you're going to give your character that gives them some realistic qualities. And Jack has a lot of depth. He's not just FBI. As you know, as the story progresses, you learn a lot about Jack and how he became the man he is. And I think it's very interesting to note Jack. One of the women, she was 90 years old, who had just finished reading the book. And I walked into her birthday and she goes, "Denise, have you finished that second book yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And she goes, "Well, I woke up this morning and I was wondering what Jack was doing." And I thought, wow, at 90 and she's wondering what Jack is up to. That's pretty good if you have characters that people are concerned about and want to learn more about.
Yeah, nobody's concerned about David. No.
No.
David has a problem with drinking, and he's the assistant to Jack, but that's a diversion from
Yes, yes.
what we're talking about.
Well, but it's interesting.
Well, I have a couple more questions for you. Are your Japanese characters based on anybody in reality that you have met?
Not really. I did interview some Japanese women, and I've, like I said, from a very early age, I was exposed to the culture, love it. I was dancing Bonadori, I think, when I was age 7. I was in, Mom, I have to get in that. I have to be in a kimono, I have to dance. And so, and it just evolved. And I think one of the most important things in a book such as this is there always has to be conflict on all levels, but is showing the balance between the Japanese who were here and who were supporting America and loving America, and the fanaticism that was still in Japan, and then the in-between. There was a lot that goes on in between.
Well, I can believe that there would be a
Yeah.
lot of conflict in regard to,
Right.
this is my home country, this is my adopted country, and I wish we wouldn't fight with each other.
Right,
But
well,
yeah, so
yeah.
I can get that middle group.
And then the spies that were working and how that they were utilizing, Yamamoto, who put together the attack on Pearl Harbor, and they spent a year planning the attack on Pearl Harbor, was at Harvard.
Yeah.
There was a great spy, a famous spy at Stanford. And of course there was the infamous spy in Hawaii that did all kinds of, took all kinds of pictures and drew graphs and everything, and was very active. So it led to some very interesting, but I'll tell you one thing, had I known, with the numerous, the stack of books that I've read, and I'm continuing to read, if I'd known how difficult emotionally it was going to be to do this research, all of the deaths, the destruction of families, the mishaps, countries, I don't know if I would have picked this subject matter. It is, in times I find it, do I have to read another book?
Yeah.
But I do.
Well then, my second question is, what specific research into the Japanese culture did you do as a part of writing this book?
Well, that goes back again to childhood, and I have read a lot of books. I've interviewed, like I said, I've interviewed people, and I've watched numerous videos on the preparation of the war, and I watched one last night that was fascinating, and it was about the relocation camps and how they maintained their culture. They had classes where they were doing the learning the correct dances and playing the instruments and things of that sort to maintain their culture. I mean, just anything I can get my hands on. I will go and travel anywhere to interview anyone, and I've been just, like I said, One of the things that I'm doing on my blog videos, besides having the videos, is I am reviewing some of the books, and I intend to list all of the books that I've used in my research, and I'm open to any other ones as well.
Good, good. Your main character, Billy, to me, she's a wonderful young lady. She's caught up in this intrigue of what the FBI wants her to do. She's reluctant to do it. She fights against them all the time. She has her fiancé spirited away to join the Army Air Corps because he wants to fly. He has a license. He wants to be flying, and they get him down to Texas, away from her, and then put in this little charade that gets her thinking, well, I've got to do something because they're not going to leave me alone. Are you planning any sequels with her? I know you said something about Jack.
Yes, no, there is. So what happens in the next book is that I'm going to, this ends, I won't tell you, but this ends, obviously, and then I follow the same characters through the war. So what you have going on is you're going to, you have a very definitive day of end. It's pretty funny because I have a lot of people who say, I know the end is coming and I really don't want it to. But it will be following specifically Billy and her brother and Jack and all of the main characters of what has to happen to them. Yeah, because
Well,
they're still alive.
They're going to be involved in World War II.
Yes, absolutely.
Some on the battlefront and some behind the scenes.
Correct.
I imagine. That's.
Yes, yes.
I'm just thinking of that.
Yes, and Billy will be extremely hands-on involved in it as well.
Good. How about additional historical fiction books? You mentioned about Whiskey Cove and the Rum Runners of the Puget Sound. Do you have any others?
Nope, I just want to get this one done. You know, it's like you need to focus right here, and if I get like in my research, if I get too sidetracked, but this one and the following, and then we're going to see what muse strikes me again. But for right now, it's just Billy and what is going on with her and her life. Because she's an extremely complex character.
Oh, very good. I noticed at the end of your book that you included a set of questions for book clubs.
Yes.
And if a book club would like to get a hold of you and speak with you, they can contact you.
Please.
And we'll place on the video here and on our website and such, we'll make sure that you all in the audience get contact information for Denise. And she is available for book club entertainment.
Absolutely. I love to talk at any function, even if you have if you're doing a fundraiser, and you know, call me. I'll come. I'll do whatever I can to help, and especially where it's involved with the military, the Coast Guard, anything. Oh, one of the gentlemen I interviewed is 102 years old. 102 years old, and he was in the Coast Guard, and I had lunch with him recently, and he said, oh, I don't get around much anymore. And I looked at him and I said, but Captain Buxton, I know where you've been. His group was the little convoy, their convoy in Upper Greenland sunk a U-boat. They were credited with that. Helped land troops in Africa, Sicily. He was off Australia, New Guinea. This man, he's marvelous. I absolutely adore him. And so those are the men and women that I'm looking for to interview, who have any sense of what it was like during World War II. We have to keep this history alive.
This history has to be recorded and alive, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'd like to give you the final word. Is there anything that you'd like to pass on to our BCAT audience about how you worked through this craft and this art of writing?
Nothing comes easy. I was not a reader. And theater really saved me there and got me going. So I guess I would say, if you're going to do anything, don't be afraid to get it done, and just keep going with it. Dee Dee Goldsmith, whose sister happened to be the Egg and I author, gave me a cup when I was small. She was like one of my godmother, and it says, "Success is loving what you do." It sounds so simple, but it really and truly is. If you're going to write something, don't be afraid. Do it. Get out there and don't let anyone try and take over your story for you. Just do it. I always tell my students, just get out there, and don't be afraid, because you need to live your life the way you want to. And if it is creative, it's not going to be a straight path. It never is.
No, they're not. I have found the same thing in the projects that I have that I'm
Right,
working
because you
on.
write as well.
I do. Well, I appreciate your time here with us, Denise, and please keep in touch. Let
I
us
would
know
love
of
it.
any other projects you're doing. Since you are coming into Kitsap County, we welcome you into CLAW.
Thank you.
And we do
Thank
have
you.
meetings that we hold on the first and third Wednesdays at the East Side Family Pancake House at 7 o'clock. So any of you who are interested authors out there and want to get involved with us, please come by one of our meetings.
Oh.
Wednesdays, first and third of each month at the Family Pancake House on Wheaton Way in East Bremerton. So I would like to thank, again, Denise Frisino for spending time with us today, and with all of the viewers for tuning in to BCAT Public Access and viewing our CLAW production. I also wish to thank the BCAT staff, who is on the camera and in the director's chair, and for Mark Miller, who has stepped in to work on one of the cameras. He's one of the members of CLAW. And our next broadcast, which is scheduled for December. I hope everyone has a pleasant rest of the day. And until next time, I am Peter Stockwell with Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers in conjunction with the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television. As we would say in a film, that's a wrap. Good day.